I'd like to call regular meeting to order for October 18th, 2022. Please rise and join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any public input?
Yeah, Nick Ellis, 13 Pond Road, a member of the Board of Finance, but I'm speaking as a resident of town. I understand there was some discussion about COVID money to fix the air problems we have in the high school. I hear there's some movement. I'm sure you're going to discuss it. And, I totally support that. I think the COVID money was designed for things that towns need, not what they want so much. I know there's some fire equipment that's on the agenda also. And again, first responders, police, I think we bought a traffic car with the COVID money, so maybe we can buy some of that equipment the fire department's asking for. With fuel oil over $6 a gallon today, people are gonna freeze their houses this winter. I think it's a bad optic if we just keep buying certain things and not considering the struggles that they're gonna have. So I support buying things that we need. And I support the high school HVAC system that's gonna be upgraded. Those are things we need. So I just wanted to support that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, correspondence. We have several correspondence from the Bethel Fire Department and Stony Fire Department. It's their capital plan for both departments. And Bethel Fire Department has some information about their doors, glass wall, and their capital also. So Brian, that's just really for us to look at tonight. Be no action taken on that. All right, moving along. I'd like to add to the agenda 2 items. We need to make a motion for the consideration of the acceptance of an additional state of Connecticut DPH money in the amount of $16,000 for the Johnson and Berry School United Sports Program.
So, you want a motion out of the agenda?
Yes.
That's fine.
Second.
Yes, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, need to add another thing for the agenda. Make a motion for a consideration of a rural road speed enforcement grant for the Bethel Police Department.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Carries. We'll add that to the agenda and the end of the agenda. Next on the acting first selectman report. It's paving season. They're working up at Briarcliff right now. They've reclaimed the road up there. It's been graded, and they're gonna put the binder coat down on tomorrow. Grand Street has been milled, and paving will approximately be on Thursday. These are all weather permitting. Paul and Willow Street has been milled, and the date for paving there is roughly 10/21. Hvac Terrace has been milled, and paving is approximately 10/26 for that road. Grandview Terrace and Pleasant Street have been milled, and approximately date for paving there is 10/25. So the highway department has notified all the neighbors, please not to park on the road so they can get their work done. Consideration of the regular meeting minutes of September 6th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Are there any additions, deletions? All in favor to accept the minutes as presented? Aye. Carried. Consideration of accepting the minutes of the special meeting of October 11th, 2022.
Make a motion to approve the special meeting minutes of October 11th, 2022.
Second, is there any additions, deletions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next on consideration of the Board of Education, HABC, grant options for Bethel High School. Dr. Carver is here to make a presentation here.
Okay, just share my screen, good. I appreciate you giving us the time this evening. Let's get the slideshow going. So I think you both know that we presented to the Board of Finance last Tuesday. And what we hope to cover tonight is a little bit of the state, to give an overview of where we are with the state HVAC grant opportunity program. An update on the funding plan since last week. Also a little bit about the ARPA funding requests and options for grant funding as we consider beyond kind of where the priorities are. I think we both know, and you should have a copy of the feasibility study and master plan that was done by Kohler Ronan last June. They presented to the Board of Ed last June. And the report itself provided some pretty widespread issues across Bethel High School, and we had it done because we were concerned about constantly pumping money to fix things, and we really wanted to get a thorough look of what was going on at the high school and what their recommendations were kind of going forward. In the meantime, and after we actually presented that report, the governor announced, I think it was late this summer, that the state had allocated $150 million towards HVAC improvements in public schools that was going to be operated under the Office of School Construction. And what that means practically is that we have the ability to apply for this grant as a town. And just like the security grant and the school construction grant, it's a matching grant, meaning that the state will reimburse, and our published reimbursement rate is 46.43% on the dollar. And we have to submit an application by December 1st if we want to apply for the grant to address the HVAC needs. I will say, and I shared this earlier with the acting selectmen, that I had found out this week, or actually Mrs. Variali and I had both found out this week when we were going through a lot of state paperwork, that one of the conditions of actually applying for the grant was that you couldn't have received funding through the Office of School Construction for within the last 20 years. But I contacted the state, I contacted the person that I have the direct relationship with, and found out that we actually are eligible to apply for the grant. That the previous, what we refer to as the renovation of Bethel High School, the state considers an alteration. And I think that the distinguishing fact is with Johnson and Rockwell, we renovated as new and completely upgraded all the mechanical systems. So we do have the ability to still apply for the grant. But there are certain requirements that are expected of both the town and the district to make that application move forward. And I apologize because I know Mr. Strahan heard a lot of this, but I also know that Mr. Kurzian didn't. So this slide kind of gives an overview of what the expectations are with the state in terms of the grant application process. So the first thing that will be required is that we'll in some of this we have in place, right? So obviously I can apply for the DAS grant, and I've confirmed that that's okay, even though our Bethel High School alteration was within the last 20 years. The town of Bethel has a building committee, so that's not a big deal in terms of applying for the grant. And we also had to authorize the preparation of at least schematic drawings. Like I said, because we had engaged in this process prior, we're in a really good footing for the application process itself, because Kohler Ronan did a lot of the pre-work to make us eligible for the application process. You know, and then there's like a list of things the school district has to do to apply for this. The first, it's really not that different than we applied for Berry and Rockwell School. We have to apply for, we have to prioritize what school buildings. Obviously, we're only applying for Bethel High School because that's the only school that needs the work. We've done the assessment through Kohler Ronan. We have an established capital plan that we've had for the past, as long as I've been here. We've always had a 10-year capital plan for this, so that's already in place. But the second and third things are kind of, the last two bullets are very important. we also have to establish local funding. And the way that works with the state is that we can apply by December 1st. But depending upon what option we go for, and we'll get to that later in the presentation, we have to have, it's because it's a match program, we have to guarantee that the town will be willing to provide the match for whatever funding is not covered through the grant. We got some clarification after the Board of Finance meeting that what the state is willing to entertain is that we don't actually have to have a referendum by December 1st to apply for the grant. But we have to have a commitment from the town to go to referendum prior to January 30th, 2023. Does that make sense? The only thing that I emailed them today, just to clarify, I think it's an important point, is that if we go to referendum, I guess I would feel more comfortable going to referendum because I know it costs the town money to go to the referendum. Are we doing it based on the fact that they're saying that we're likely to get the grant? So I want to know their timeline for approving applications pending the local things. Because what I would hate to happen is we go through the whole process, the town invests in a referendum, and then we find out we don't even get the grant. So I want to get some clarity on that, just to see what their timeline is internally. And I said to the Board of Finance, you know, I think we have a good shot at getting the grant because we have a lot of pieces in place that a lot of districts can't do by December 1st. And you know, just the feasibility and master plan, they were crawling around the high school for about 3 months. I feel like it was 3 months. And then they had to write the reports to make their recommendations. So so that puts us in a good place. The other thing that they pointed out is that you can use ARPA funds to offset the total cost of the grant, but ARPA funds can't be used to match the grant. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. And then these are things that we have to do internally. We have to prepare and approve educational specifications. We've already started this work and we have experience doing it because we just did it for Rockwell and Johnson. So I don't view that as a big deal. We can do that internally. We also have to get another student enrollment study done. And so we are in the process of getting that done and we expect that within the next couple of weeks. And then we also have to get cost estimates. And we also are looking at making sure that there isn't any environmental conditions that would escalate the cost of the project. So I believe that they're going to be coming out soon. We've contracted with a firm that's going to look at most of the asbestos abatement was done during the alteration. The alteration of the high school. But there are some places there are tiles, blue behind corkboards. Yeah, things like that. So the question is, would they be disturbed as part of this process? So we want to make sure we have a good handle on that. If I learned nothing from the other projects, that can certainly escalate, especially at Rockwell School, the project. So this is a little bit of an update that I gave from the Board of Finance initially. And I just want to point out a couple of things and then walk you through the next slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jen. We did have to put a variety of upfront costs towards starting the execution of the process, both in the initial phase, which we'll talk about in a minute, and in preparing the bid specs for those. So we have upfronted those costs in terms of the things. Well, let me show you things such as the design for the construction project. We do have a placeholder for any type of asbestos abatement that might have to occur as a result of the project. But that is a placeholder based on Kohler Ronen's input and in terms of what they think it might cost for abatement. The enrollment study I already talked about. We also had some commissioning. We also had a placeholder for commissioning costs, which we got an estimate on. And I think Kohler Ronen, we got a separate estimate, and Kohler Ronen confirmed that they thought likely that would be the cost of commissioning. So the upfront cost that we are funding through our ESSER grant totals $254,700. Now, if you look at the base bid, we expressed to the Board of Finance and I will express it to both of you, that the most important thing that we have to replace is our what we call ERU2. And that is the unit that sits over our science lab. And the biggest issue with that is, Chris, only it's the ventilation.
It's recirculating right now, so there's no outside air coming in, it's just constant recirculation. The heat was destroyed. Because it's an energy recovery unit. There's two of them that were in the building. One serves the upper floor, the other serves the lower floor. And the heat bill it broken for a significant amount of time. Just to replace that is almost $100,000.
Right. And the biggest issue is because it's a science lab and they use chemicals. We actually can't use the science labs for its express purpose unless it doesn't involve different types of chemicals. So that's the biggest piece that we think has to be replaced and probably the highest priority. So if you look at that, plus what it's costing for the upfront cost, that gets us to almost $600,000 in terms of what we would spend out of our ESSER money to replace that first priority. Does that make sense? Questions? Okay. Now, if we want to focus in on the big and most prioritized sections of the grant, of the feasibility study in terms of the units that need to be replaced, it is ERU2. And then the 1975 additions, the second and third floor, is probably the hottest place at Bethel High School. And so there's two things that are included in that, obviously to air condition the spaces. And the second piece of it is the ventilation and creating appropriate ventilation. One of the things that we talked about at the Board of Finance meeting is that when they did the alteration of Bethel High School, they actually made the windows smaller. And so the ventilation through windows became much more limited. I don't know what the right word is. And so not only do they have to add air conditioning to that space, but they have to add the HVAC piece of it. So if we want to finish those two phases, what we would need, and I know that that there was a commitment of about $400,000 out of our ARPA funds for that initial phase. And I, Jen and I, and with Brad Herring, sat down and we spoke to Craig Raza, who is our design consultant at Kohler Ronan, to see if there was any way we could break down the cost and still be able to do some work within the parameters of the 1.1 million. And there was really no way to break it down in a manner that it would actually, I guess, help. I don't know if you want to explain, Jen, like that they said that they could put the ducting in, but they're not there. Yeah, it made absolutely no sense. So we couldn't break down the cost within that top priority. So what we're requesting to get that done, which would get us really far to completing that base of that first phase. The only thing that would be left out of that base for the first phase is the fans in the bathrooms. So what we're requesting is that the town consider supplementing that with ARPA funds at the cost of $855,160. And that would get us to where we need to be able to cover the bigger priorities. Right?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, is it possible to move the?
Yeah, can you move that other side?
Block.
So we can see it. Thanks so much, Mary. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So this on the right is a breakdown of the work that would be done. So it's adding a DOMES unit and there's two other HCC units and VRFs for the second and third floor that would cover the math English classrooms. So all that work is about 960,000. But we still have a little more than 100,000 from our
ESSER
funds that
funds.
we can contribute, which would bring the town funds down to 855.
160. Yeah, 160. And so if that were possible, then it changes what we presented to the Board of Finance the other night. So that would change the options as we consider the grants. And as I said to the Board of Finance, we don't need an answer tonight about what you want us to apply for. We just want, if you were to approve that amount, it would change what the options that we would be discussing to consider for the total project. In terms of the grant application. So, Jen, you want to explain?
Sure, so, we showed slides like this to the Board of Finance, and they're a little bit changed because if these assume, this shows what would happen if the 855K does get approved, from the town. So if we were able to use that, then the whole project that we would be applying for the grant for would be about $5.7 million. And the town would fund about 3.1 of that as our part of the match, and the grant would fund 2.6 million if we get the grant. So this would be doing the whole project to just get everything done as soon as possible and to leverage getting the most amount of matching money from the state.
Right. Go ahead.
Okay, so all three of these options have the same initial phase up at the top. And this second option here is applying for just the high and medium priority work. So the project would be a little bit smaller at $4.2 million. And the town matching piece would be about 2.2, and the grant would fund about $2 million. And that leaves $1.5 million of work that would not be covered at this time, that would be deferred until later. Or the town would pick up the cost for that, but that last 1.5 would not be eligible for any grant funding.
And we'll show you what's high, medium, and low, because it's the last chart on the last page.
Yes. And option C, this would be an option to choose if we are trying to minimize our funding now and delay a lot of the work. So this option is to do only the high priority work, which would cost about $1 million. And the town would fund a little more than half of that at about $536,000, with the grant funding at about $464,000. And this would be deferring $4.7 million worth of work that would not be eligible for the grant.
Right. So if you look at the last page, this gives a list of all of the units. So when we talk about the high and medium work in option B, it corresponds to the yellow and some of the red, correct?
Yes, yes, and I updated this to show the 2 units we recently replaced at the high school, which were the cafeteria and the auditorium. And I also added a column to show whether or not air conditioning exists in some of these spaces. Because some of the, for example, the locker rooms and the gym currently don't have any air conditioning.
Right.
So, and there's also a view towards the front that might be a little cleaner to look at. Right, if we go back to
This,
Sure.
the chart.
this chart, this has the high priority work in the top section, the middle section is medium, and the bottom there is the low priority.
So the second section incorporates both the first and the second,
Yes.
and then the first one is all three.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So questions?
What thought process goes into like including the very low priority ones on your list? Like when I'm looking at your chart,
Right.
you know, someone would say they have 10 to 15
Yeah.
years left of useful life. And what's the purpose of adding those to the project?
Well, that's a discussion, right? The only benefit to doing it, taking care of it all now, is the potential cost reimbursement and deferring it now. You can clearly see from the report, they do have a longer lifespan and they could be pushed out. That's why we kind of presented it as different options for consideration. There were a lot of other things within the master feasibility study. That yes, the unit itself isn't, might have five years or 10 years left on it. But there were other issues within there, like, I don't know, duct work that, maybe Chris helped me, that goes nowhere, and there were some.
Boys and girls locker room, you're doing it because you want AC included.
Right, and
Why
those
you're doing
rooms
that?
tend, yes.
Better.
Ventilation.
They're,
Now,
By there now, it's.
again, that's a low priority.
right,
It says no work required unless you want air conditioning on your chart.
yes, yes.
So that's
Right.
correct.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
There's a unit downstairs. That's running with just a clean oil.
Dr. Carter, I think it'd be helpful, that was during the renovation and it was not AC, and that's what this upgrade is.
Correct. Which is the.
So when you get by, like if you go by the boys locker room now during football season. it emanates out with the cafeteria, so that's one of the issues.
Right.
There's moisture there.
Is there a time limit on the funding for the, once you, if you get the grant, is there a time limit that you have to use it all up in a certain period of time?
My experience has been no.
Okay,
It's just
so we
like,
could stretch it out possibly a little bit.
that's correct, but you do have to make it, so regardless of whatever option we go with,
Yeah, if we make the commitment,
you have
Right.
to do it. But I will tell you, and I mean, I think you both could tell me, from what we're hearing from Polar Roman, they can't even get units for
Yeah,
52
yeah.
weeks. And I think it depends on a unit, like, I think they said
Some are-
the Goaz.
20 to 30.
Right. So I think that just given the fact that there's going to be a delay in some of the equipment, I mean, he mentioned on the phone the other day that there's 100. Let me say 150 on some of the equipment, or am I making that up?
No, that was a highly specialized.
Yeah, so I don't know that it's gonna happen all that quickly anyways. Where we do have a problem is with the ESSER funds. That we have to spend within a certain time.
Is Brad at the meeting tonight?
Yeah, down the hall.
Brad?
Yep, I'm here.
Brad, if we chose to go with the full replacement, do everything, it looks like the town's side is 3.1 million.
Yep.
Would your plan be to use fund balance for that, or would your plan be to bond it?
Depending on the time of it, I would try to get as much of that down using fund balance as possible. Right now, I don't think we could take the whole 3.1 and stay above our 18% fund balance. But that's not to say by the time that we actually need to spend the funds, that we wouldn't have more in the fund balance. Or capital on our turn.
Concern, Brad, was we discussed it, that the whole plan of using the debt service and everything was if we didn't take any more debt.
Yeah.
And we're talking about taking on more debt.
Yeah, so that would be, what we probably do is do short-term bans, do the time frame of it, and hopefully pay those off before we take on long-term debt.
How much do you think we'd have available out of the fund balance to buy this stuff?
Probably after we close out this fiscal year 22, I'm guessing we have over $2 million in fund balance that we can use immediately. And with the timing of when we're actually going to have to come up with some of this money, even if it was approved at the end of January, my guess is this project alone we'd be able to do just through fund balance, most of, if not all of.
And I want to be crystal clear, Brian, just because we applied for the full amount, if that's the decision at the end of the day, because I mean, there's options here.
Yep.
If that's the decision at the end of the day, we may not get that whole amount either.
I
that is-
understand, I'm just trying,
Yeah, that is a very real.
I just like to calculate things in my head because,
Yeah.
we had this discussion when we decided to use, debt service as a way, even though no one likes to talk about it, to buy down the mill rate, which is what we did. Okay. We said, as long as we don't take on any more debt, we just want to know what the impacts of taking more debt on it has. No value-based judgment on the project. I mean, if it was up to me, we will do everything because that's the smart thing to do, is to get it done, economy of scale all at once.
Yeah.
But I can't vote on something without having an idea what the impact is to the town and whatnot. So that's why I'm asking these questions to Brad.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the value of the project.
Brian, if you remember during the budget process, when we started talking about using the debt service fund, there is $600,000 that was never allocated. That would still be in the debt service fund. In case we did take on some more, but that's why it wasn't. But to your point, I agree with you that we're trying to balance our debt and not increase it as much as possible.
So I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say on the grant phase, as I mentioned before, we could maybe control that a little bit, because between the ordering the equipment and getting specifications done, we're probably talking at least another year
Right.
before we buy anything.
He said, I think he said it would take 4 to 5 months just to design.
Yeah, so we're probably not talking
And
about,
what's bid.
What type of
Till
contingency?
next year.
What
We spread it out a little bit.
type of contingency's been put in here for inflation?
10% on the
10%, you're
And
figuring
any
for inflation.
escalation cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 10% on the contingency and 7.5%.
So you have 17.5% total in there. So Brad, what would this do to your tax stabilization fund? Would that money be used to buy down this short-term debt? Because, you know, you guys started that too, so.
The tax stabilization fund has $0 in it right now. So if we knew something like this was coming on, instead of putting excess revenue collections into the tax stabilization fund, my recommendation would be to put it into capital non-recurring. So we would still then not have any money in the tax stabilization fund. But at least we'd be loading up the CNR a little bit more, knowing that we would rather pay down capital than take on debt.
I guess, you know, Brad, my concern is, and again, you know, I'm in support of the project, but. You know, and again, no value-based, you know, we have the fire department coming in for lots of things that were never discussed during the budget season. I mean, a lot of this stuff needs to be thought out ahead of time, right? So we can plan on what we need and what we don't need, correct?
Correct.
And at some point, we need to say that you need to bring this forward. And I'm not talking about your project here, Dr. Carver. I'm not
No,
trying to
no,
be-
I know.
But, you know, I really think that, you know, we're spending a ton of money. You know, every meeting, we're buying trucks, we're buying this, we're buying that, and they weren't asked for during the capital budget. So, and this has nothing to do with your project, so you don't need, that. You don't, there's nothing. Yeah.
Be sitting here,
Right.
except that this grant.
Grant.
opportunity
Yeah, I
is
get it.
available.
I'm in support of your project. You don't need to worry about Brian Harris. You're not supporting your
Right, right,
project.
right.
My thing is that I just think that we really need to be careful. Because, you know, we said we don't want to take on debt. We said we don't want to do all this. We're spending a lot of money, which again, there's no value judgment on the spending. It's just planning and thinking it out. And I'm not talking about your project. I understood about the grant coming up, you gotta move on it.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know, Rich, I don't know what you think.
Well, I think there's the funding for option A is the way to go because at least we can get 2.6 million back from hopefully.
You're talking about the go with the full plan.
Yeah, go with the full plan.
It's 3.1 million.
Right,
Yeah,
as
grant-
the
grant.
town fund, as well as the total is 5.7.
I would agree with that.
And, you know, I'd like to move forward on it, so they give them direction to start the planning for it, and then we need to work out the finances with the controller and the finance board on it.
So,
But, you know, on the upper part, you know, we're pretty much committed. We have to use that money by the end of next June. And,
September.
September
Yeah.
of 23.
Well, technically it's 24. Are you talking about my ESSER grant?
Yes.
Yes, has to be completely, all bills paid by September of 24,
By
September 30th. Yes.
so Richie, I'll make a motion that we approve funding option A for the HVAC project for the school. Where the town on our side agrees to use 855,000.
All right, well, that's the next,
That's what you want to do that.
yeah, that's the next, you know, we're just approving this concept.
And I just
Right
want to
here.
reinforce, you don't have to make a decision tonight about the options.
Okay,
We would need you to make a final decision by November. So if you don't have to build pressure, you have to make a decision on the options tonight.
No, want me to make a motion back?
Well,
I'm just asking you the question. Throw my motion, I will.
no, he's in favor of it and I'm in favor of it, so there you got votes there. You want us to change your mind?
No, I don't. I just want to be clear.
Just wonder how you feel if the principal said that to us. I could
You know,
see the look going across the room.
Dr. Carver, unless something drastic comes up,
Yeah.
you know, you come back to us and we're gonna, and you,
full grant.
and,
We might the dollar.
well, that's the information you're gonna get back to us on
Right.
for the second part
That's right.
of this.
That's a game changer,
Yeah.
but I will say, And I really appreciate the consideration of the 855, the ARPA funds, because even if we don't get the grant, that will put us light years ahead.
All right, so we're just approving funding option A right now.
Correct.
That's a
All right.
motion,
I'll second that motion.
no discussion.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Any other questions? All right,
Thank you.
all right,
So the
next.
second part,
Next on the agenda is to the consideration of using the ARPA funds towards the HABC project for the Bethel High School.
I make a motion that we allocate $855,000 in town operation ARPA funds to fund part of this HVAC project.
I'll second it for discussion. Originally, there was talk about allocating 400,000 for this project. Since this option came up with the other grant, Dr. Carver and Brad from the finance office came down and we discussed it thoroughly, and I was in agreement that, you know, we should use the other the money from the ARPA funds to get it up to the 850. There was give and take on both sides, and we came to an agreement that we thought this was the best option to move forward on. So that's what we came up with. So with that, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for being
All right.
worried about my feelings. Doc. That doesn't happen very often.
All right, next on the agenda is consideration of tax refunds. We have a letter from the tax collectors, Paula Usher. I'll make a motion that we refund taxes in the amount of $19,006.95. These funds are a result of overpayment of taxes. So discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
The next on the agenda is I'll make a motion to waive the bid for the dry sand to Moonlight Excavation LLC for a minimum delivery of 22 tons at $27.50 a ton for the winter sanding of our streets.
Second,
Discussion,
I'm assuming this is who Bob wanted
Yes.
to go with.
right? They put it out to bid. There was no bidders for it. That the highway department contacted this person who they bought sand from before, and this is the result.
Rich, how much is the total cost of that?
The total cost,
Yeah,
I don't have a total cost.
It's unknown, Marty. It depends how much we
Minimum
buy.
delivery of
so
27
it's
tons.
not what's on the paper then. Because the paper just says that the minimum delivery is gonna be 22 tons.
Yeah.
So
so
22 times 27 is what, Brad? I don't have my calculator here. What's that? I guess what I'm getting at is.
He might buy more.
How much?
He might buy more. This is just the minimum bid amount.
No, I know.
So it's $605 per, when you do the 22 times 27.5. But hopefully we don't really need a bid waiver because it'll be under 50,000, but
Well, that's the point that I was trying to make.
yeah, but I think the budget for sand is usually over 50,000. So we thought the right thing to do is do it this way.
2750 times 22, it has to be over 50,000.
Yeah, that's what Marty's saying.
It's
If
gotta be
you-
over 50,000.
No,
if you're gonna waive the budget, if you're gonna waive it, I mean, under the charter, then even though I understand what you're saying, Brad, it's over $50,000, what you expect in the long run. All right, but if you're gonna do it, it can't just say, I'm gonna waive the bids. You have to put the reasons down. They've got to be in writing and they've got to be filed in 24 hours with the town clerk's office. That's all I'm saying. That's
Okay.
why I kept looking at this and saying, why are we doing this? But now I understand what you're saying. Okay. I guess the answer is because you didn't have any bidders. Correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And I'm pulling up right now what we budgeted for sand. He just gave me 1 minute. 82,932.
Yeah, okay. I got it.
So
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, that's the minimum delivery is 22 tons. That's per truck.
Right.
Was that? 18
Yeah.
yards?
It's
Okay.
Relatively big, 1 ton to a yard.
Yard, yeah.
It's about 20 yards.
20 yards. How do you want to handle it, Brad?
But- Oh,
I think you need to do the bid waiver because I anticipate it's going to go over 50,000.
yeah, you won't have to come back to it then, if it
Yeah.
does. And just put down because there was only did this person even bid?
They
It just
Didn't-
submitted an
they
offer?
didn't bid, so then Dibble called them because it's who's the lowest bidder last year, and then they submitted their pricing.
So then I would just put down that the reasons were that there were no bidders, that this was the bidder last year and it was the lowest price last year as well. That's it.
Brad, is there a state contract on sand?
I don't believe so. I know there is on salt, but Bob Dibble usually does better on salt than the state bid anyway.
Mary, would you have heard Marty's comments?
I did.
Okay,
I make a motion that we accept the bid waiver due to the fact that there were no bidders and Moonlight Excavating LLC was the cheapest supplier last year. Is that what you wanted, Marty?
Yes.
second. Any other discussion? Like excavation.
Excavating LLC.
All right, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
cheers. Thank you, Marty.
Yeah.
Okay, G1, we're up to. Ryan, consideration, I'll put a motion on the table to approve $4,941 for United Alarm video surveillance at Bethel Firehouse. This is the additional cameras that they requested. This installation is included.
This was requested during the initial budget season.
Brad, was this on their initial request?
The initial capital plan, I do
Yes.
not, let me check. So Bethel Fire for the fiscal year 22-23 only had 2 things on their capital request through the budget process. Replace ladder truck and refurbish rescue 1.
All right.
So
Well, when they modified the capital plan, a lot of things got left off, other than the big things like the truck. And they were told when they needed something to come before the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance.
who told them that?
Well,
Richie,
was-
the fire commission is trying to figure out where all the keys are, and that's where the request is coming, is from the new fire. commission.
well, yeah, but it's coming from the departments to the fire commission.
And pass through the fire commission.
Correct,
Right.
correct. Well, the fire commission approved these things, and that's why we have it today. So
Again,
basically, Brad, isn't that what happened, what occurred? That they were told that just the large items such as the trucks had to go for the capital, and then they could come before the fire commission, then the fire commission would relay that on to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance.
There were some items during the budget process that were removed from South Street's budget and said that they should go for capital non-recurring requests. I don't believe most of these items were on that list.
Well, this is part of the security system that they've been working on to get installed. They requested a couple more 4 more cameras to cover the building. These exterior cameras, they have cameras interior. And these are cameras for outside. There's also coming up is a request for Stony Hill Fire Department for security cameras too.
Rich, I understand, but
Yeah.
I read the agenda. My question was why was this, I mean, we don't wake up and just say we're gonna put
No.
cameras at the firehouse. It's not a value judgment, but this is all stuff that should have been done at the beginning of the budget season. And not told to just come back and ask for capital requests. That's
No.
nothing, I mean,
And
if I budgeted my business that way, I'd be bankrupt.
I understand that, but Chief McCollum's not here today and he would tell you that that's what occurred. They were told not to put it on the capital plans and to come forward on these things, so. We can.
Just for
discuss-
clarification, I know it goes back as during the budget process. I've been asking the fire commission and the firehouses for a detailed capital listing of at least 5 years for almost a year. And I know the fire commission's new. But like some of this stuff, I understand comes up like broken doors. But there's been a lot of equipment approved that we know the lifespan of. So all their air packs and stuff should be pretty easy to put on a capital schedule. So we can see how much each year the firehouses are going to be looking for stuff on that stuff. Because it does seem like we've been doing a lot of one-offs where I'd like to see it from a financial standpoint, a more detailed outs of what's coming up for capital. You know,
The plans, the 5-year plans that the fire department submitted under correspondence has nothing, air bottles or small equipment that they need. It's all large items, 125,000, 250, 98, and then the big truck is 1.8.
Maybe we could.
We need to tell them that, you know, they have to put everything together for the coming budget season to do a capital plan.
Why don't we get through this and then we can speak to Chief Baker, who's here, who can maybe have an explanation for it.
John, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Was that what you were told about the capital items?
That's correct. Anything that's under 10,000 really should just be going through the fire commission. It was the big ticket items like the trucks, the chief truck that I'm looking to get approved. That was supposed to go through as capital, but it kept getting pushed off because of waiting for a budget and fleet studies. So things got pushed off. But these smaller items like the camera systems, the AEDs, and the AEDs, I actually tried to put through as a ARPA request. But now that they're obsolete, it is becoming an emergency request.
Chief, in terms of things like Scott packs, that's what you guys use to breathe in a fire, right? Do you have to purchase those every year? Like, is there a certain amount that basically you're replacing yearly?
When it comes to air packs, the bottles are really the only things that are mandated to be replaced, and that's every 15 years, and that's what I have spelled out on the 5-year, or at one point I had it out to a 10-year plan. The air packs really don't have to be replaced as long as they're passing their flow testing, which we just did flow testing. And I asked that exact question to the text. He says, you can get another 20 years out of these if they get used at the rate that they're being used. If you want to, you can replace them to get some of the upgrades that are out there, or you can retrofit them with some of the upgrades, but he says the packs are fine. So yeah, I'd like to eventually replace them and get some of the upgrades that are out there, but
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
plan.
So many that you need to do a year. And again, I don't know I mean, if we were talking police, I'd
I
probably.
mean, so I've been trying to set
The
up. a
models,
bottle
once they reach their
replacement.
life expectancy, they're done. So 15 years from the date.
But do they
that
all
it's
reach it on 15 years?
Well, the.
So every bottle, so we don't buy them
15
all.
bottles, I
It'd
can't
be
change.
a huge expense
Right,
to buy them all at the same time. So we buy them in lots. So we slowly hydro test, so they're all not getting hydro test.
but is it a yearly thing?
So it's not yearly where they're replacing bottles. It's, you know, we'll buy X amount for each truck and we'll make sure those each go for hydros, if they go for
To me,
hydro.
I'm just
And
questioning.
we don't need them every year, it's just once they.
I'm just wondering whether this is something that would make more sense in your operating budget. I mean, you know. If it's something that we're doing all the time, you know, then it's really not a capital expense. What we're talking about is an operating expense.
Well,
And then
that
we
was the question that we had last year. We had approximately 22 bottles that went out, which was way over the $10,000 mark of replacing, because now these bottles are getting to be $1,300, $1,400 a piece. And when we had 20 of them that had to be replaced, we're trying to get it staggered. So an entire truck, which would be a complement of 12 bottles, is what's being replaced in a given year, and only that amount. And then we would have specific amounts and specific dates that we would know in advance. You know, whether you take it out of the operating budget, you're going to have, you know, huge fluctuation in your operating budget any year that you have bottles that need to be replaced, or you just know it's going to be a capital request on an upcoming year. That's up to you how you want to handle that.
Well, I mean, the variance is easily explainable. I mean, if you have
Right.
a problem in that year and it is what it is, I mean, and that's where capital non-reoccurring could kick in saying, hey, we understand you had a problem this year. You weren't anticipating a 20 bottle replacement. No problem, we cover it. And Chief Baker, this isn't, again, anything against you. I understand you were told not to put for any of these items in your capital, but you could understand my confusion that, you know, each meeting, and now I find out why it's happening, that I keep getting all these requests, and it's like, well, wait a minute. We didn't discuss any of this in budget season. And when you add them all up, the numbers are pretty big. And again, not a value judgment at all. I was just trying to figure out why, you know, these requests keep coming in and why we didn't know about it at the beginning of the year. So I have a much better understanding now, and I appreciate your honesty.
Rich, can I add one thing about
Well-
well, again, it's.
Yeah,
Board of
all right,
And again, last year, just to be fair to the fire departments, last year, the fire commission trimmed South Street. He had a 60% increase because he did put all these small items in.
Right.
And then the fire commission did say to him, no, they cut it down to like a 10. With the acknowledgement that they were going, you know, coming out of those things during the year. And again, I'm not making excuses for him, but that, I mean, words are important. That's clearly what happened. DJ knocked him down and then said, come to us.
come back, yeah, show us that you need it and
Well,
then come back, so.
I'm making a motion that we approve 4941 for the United Alarm Video Surveillance.
Well, I had already made that motion, and so you second
I'll
it,
second
all
it.
right, well,
We'll vote on it.
let me restate the motion, because the motion to approve and to refer to the Board of Finance United Alarm for additional cameras in the amount not to exceed $4,941 for the Bethel Firehouse, and to come from CNR.
That's all you want, right?
Hmm.
We can make the recommendation.
Yeah,
That's all you want.
yeah, it's a recommendation, but. All right, any other discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, well, we have several others here. All right. Put a motion on the table to approve and to refer to the Board of Finance replacement of 6 AEDs for the Stony Hill Fire Department in the amount of $16,359.78 from Boundtree Corporation to come from CNR.
So
This is, John, you want to explain, or?
I know what they are.
Yeah, but they all came up bad now and they need to
Right,
replace them all.
but John, this was originally, Chief, you had put this in under ARPA funds.
That's correct. We knew that the end of life was coming for that particular model. We use what's called a Heart Start FR2 model. We have it on all of the fire apparatus, the utility, the expedition, the chief's truck. And we found out it came out in about 2000 and in 2018, they said they're no longer going to support it, and whatever supplies are out there for it, whether it's the pads themselves or batteries, whatever is out there in distribution, that's all that's left. So we are at that point now where the batteries are still good, but the pads are expiring out. So I had put that in as an ARPA fund request, and that went nowhere. So I said, well, it is on fire apparatus. Let me see if the town would support making that purchase. So that's why it got moved to the fire commission. The fire commission looked at it. They said, this is kind of an out of cycle. Maybe we can do half. They said, whatever you can do. I just know that the pads and the AEDs technically are basically out of service now until we can get this figured out.
So, Richard, I would just like to amend the motion or rather use capital non-recurring go through the ARPA funds like the chief originally requested.
Well, I had a discussion with Brad about it, and his recommendation was to come from the CNR.
Why is that, Brad?
It's really up to you guys. It just, I think we have other requests coming up from the ARPA funds, and we just spent $450,000 ARPA funds that were not part of the original plan, which we had room for. I know there's some other EMS requests coming up that are kind of costly, that are going to get considered for ARPA.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, can someone like kind of elucidate to me what these other plans are for the ARPA funds that I'm not aware of? I mean, because we still, according to my calculations, have a couple $1 million left in ARPA funds.
Yep.
And I mean, I can't think of anything more appropriate when we're talking about COVID funds and medical emergencies to replace AEDs with these funds. I mean, it just makes total sense to me.
I mean, one of the things that I had put in for was to replace the striker power load and stretcher system in the ambulance. Those two items are mandated by the state to have, and I was told by the vendor that I have probably one of the oldest models in the state because we jumped on it when it came out early, and they do not support the repair and maintenance of it once it becomes 14 years old, and ours are at 12. We just had them serviced. They are still holding on, but to replace these two items, I got a quote of $53,000. And I can't take that out of my department budget, knowing it's a EMS item that the town really doesn't fund. So that's why I was hoping that the ARPA funds could help solve that financial burden.
That's what we're looking at, use some of the ARPA funds for the stretcher.
What else? I mean, we have 2 million left. I mean, I can't believe a $16,000 purchase out of $2 million is that big a deal.
Yeah, it's not, we were trying to do more of the big ticket items out of ARPA, to be honest with you, Brian, and not looking at like 16,000 here. At some point we had to do something with the old PD. We had the lights on the turf field is out there. The locker rooms at the municipal center, there's a placeholder amount in there, but it's probably light. So there's other projects out there.
Such as, I'd like an answer. I mean, obviously you have a list. I just hear what these other projects are.
So what? All right, I thought you
operate, which I have, but I'm getting pushback. All I want to know is what are the other projects?
All right, so there's still
Splash pad, because if we're talking about a splash pad over AEDs, I'm gonna be a little bit, shocked.
So there is Parloa Park improvements on there, not necessarily a splash pad.
I'm not in favor of Parloa Park improvements.
Okay,
But we're talking about public safety and ARPA funds right now.
I understand. There's the lights on the turf field. There's the old PD tear down. HVAC at high school.
The old PD tear down, we got a grant to do it.
We didn't.
We did not get the grant. There's the renovate the locker rooms. There's renovate restrooms by the cafeteria in the senior center, ventilation upgrades. There's still the 2 elevators we have to deal with in town hall. Municipal center gym air conditioning is an item on there. Health department filing system. Some other IT upgrades in the building, and municipal center north wing fresh air intake.
I guess my feelings is that these ARPA funds, public safety should come first, because that's what those funds were released to the towns for. I mean, this was all due to COVID, emergencies. You know, our first line responders were out there every day doing ambulance calls, going on police service calls. You know, to use these funds for a computer upgrade over 80 AEDs, to me, just doesn't seem to be right. It doesn't seem like the spirit of what these funds were put into place for. So I make a motion that we use the ARP. I'm amending the motion that we purchase these AEDs for the Stony Hill Fire Department out of the ARP funds.
Well, it looks like we're gonna have our first standoff.
I can't believe, Richie, I cannot believe that you will say no to ARPA fund, rather to fund.
I'm not saying no to the product that they want. I'm just saying no to where it's coming from.
We would rather use the funds, so you're telling me, we'd rather use the funds for IT improvements over what they were here for. Why wouldn't we use capital non-reoccurring for the IT project? Doesn't make sense.
Do that too.
So,
Yeah, this is an item that would come up throughout the year, and it would come from CNR.
so would the
With the IT. I know what you're saying.
So I'm saying, let's just stick with the spirit of what this was used for, and if IT needs 15,000, they could come to capital non-recurring. I mean, I'm just asking you to bend. I've bent
yeah.
already quite a bit, so.
I'm not gonna bend on it right now.
Right,
I will tell you, next meeting, next board of selectmen meeting, we will have an outline of the ARPA funds for you.
This is public safety. So Mary, if this could just be in the minutes. In the interest of public safety, I'll go through capital non-reoccurring, and I'm shocked that we weren't willing to stick with the spirit of these funds. I'm shocked that we were willing to get political and say no to something. How are you saying? You're gonna say no to something that we need?
And I'm
We need
saying
it.
where it come from.
You're saying it's my ball, it's the only way it's gonna go, is what you just said to me. So that's fine. I'll go with capital non-reoccurring. Richie, I'm not gonna discuss it. I'm not gonna discuss it. It's wrong, 100% wrong. And I'm on record saying it, and I'll stand by what I said.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve the request for Stony Hill Fire Department for the AEDs to come from capital non-recurring. In the amount of $16,359.78. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So Rich, just to be clear, you made the motion. Brian, did you second that?
Yes.
Under protest, sure.
All right, next on the item is consideration of $6,000 for security system at Stony Hill Volunteer Fire Department. This is to be done by the in-house IT department. Chief Baker went out and got some prices, and then was talking to the IT department, and they said that they could provide the cameras and do the work for the $6,000. Chief,
Yes,
what was the original price on that? Do you have a number?
the original bids that I was getting from 3 different vendors was anywhere from $17,000 to $20,000 for the
Did you hear
cameras.
No.
Yes,
John, you gotta say that again.
I was getting anywhere from $17,000 to $20,000 for the cost for the entire project.
Okay. Did I have a second for the motion?
Second.
Discussion? As we're on Bethel, Bethel had United Alarm do the initial installation there. It was over a 2-year project down there at Bethel. And that's why we still went with United Alarm downtown, but this is a whole new system at Stony Hill for the security. It's for 16 cameras. And I don't know if I made it my motion that this also would come from CNR. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Consideration of $107,000 for the chief's truck for Stony Hill. Motion to approve and refer to the Board of Finance the purchase of the Chief's Command Response Vehicle truck and related components in the amount of $108.14 that come from CNR.
None of it's coming from CNR. Guess we're gonna have another stalemate right now.
Well,
I'm not gonna throw $100,000 to CNR. That deserves, this most certainly deserves to go through ARPA. Without a doubt, $107,000 purchase that he was told not to put in his budget and to come back. Okay, deserves to go through ARPA, and I'm not gonna back down, and this is nothing against you, Chief Baker, and I'm sorry that you're part of this right now.
you know, this was, we never had the ARC funds when they were talking about this truck back 2 years ago. It's been pushed back and been pushed back.
So then just agree to use the ARPA funds,
Okay.
it's not that hard.
Okay. Then it won't go anywhere.
This is crazy.
I'm not
just letting you know, I'm
I'm
not
not
going
gonna
to, I'm not going into an executive session tonight. I'm just letting you know that. Not gonna happen. Okay, you wanna play these games?
I'm not playing a game.
I'm not going into an executive session tonight.
You know, I've been advised
By who? He told us it was our choice. Brad said that. Brad said it for both of us. It's our choice where it comes from. I listened to what he said. This truck deserves to go through ARPA. Period.
All right.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes,
Can we have the fire commission meet and put together a list of all their requests and deal with all these at one time, upcoming stuff too, and then we could sit down and look at ARPA and CNR and handle this all as one big project, and separate it at that point.
I mean, with the exception of the AEDs that we approved, I'd be fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
Because I would like to see the full list. I know South Street has other requests coming. And if they could put together a list of everything that they need, whether it's stretchers or anything that's not urgent, and let's look at it as a whole. There's been a ton of money out of CNR approved lately. We can use ARPA funds for this stuff. I just don't know where the end is on it. And I think, I know it's going to take a little bit longer to get some of this stuff, but I'd rather do it once and do it right.
Okay. Motion table then. I'll withdraw my motion. And a motion to table the truck. For further review from the fire commission. And the other capital improvements that they're requested. Have a second for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Chief Baker,
Yes,
is your current portable pond working in service? Or is
He
this?
doesn't have one.
that would be Bethel's request.
That's for
Oh, that's
Bethel.
Bethel's,
Yeah.
okay.
They have 2 portable ponds. One is was destroyed or broken during a fire service. They're trying to get the insurance company to possibly replace it, but in the meantime, they're requesting us to replace the pond. And it's a different dollar amount. All right, the pond.
Yes.
It was J what?
A1 and 2.
Oh, the first one.
Did you vote on that, Rich? Maybe?
No, well, we made a motion to table it.
Okay, did you have to vote on that? Brian?
All in favor of tabling?
We're tabling K2 and
The
L1.
truck.
Why don't we just table all the ones that we have coming up that we need to table? In one motion,
All right, well,
so we'll
table the garage doors.
so you want to table the truck,
And the
portable
garage.
pond,
Well, the portable pond, I'd like to move on that as soon as I find the correct number, because the original price of $3,000 has been reduced because they found that they could replace the liner itself.
Oh, I don't
It
know
was
that.
1950. I believe.
Well, Rich, on K2 is the replacement of the liner, 1989, but
1989,
if I'm not mistaken, they said they
Yes.
couldn't get the liners.
1889.
I thought they said they couldn't get.
No, he could get it.
Okay,
It would reduce the price. So Ryan, this portable pond, they currently have one. They're asking them the first replacement of the liner in the amount of 1889.
so
Make a motion that we approve the replacement of the pond liner for Bethel Firehouse in the amount not to exceed $1,889. We have a second. Any other discussion on the motion? And they're gonna try to
1989, Rich, not 1889.
$1,889.
I see 1,989 on K2.
Stand corrected, $1,989. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and they're gonna try to recoup that from the insurance company, they said, but there was no guarantee.
Is that from CNR? That wasn't in the motion.
From CNR. All right. The next thing on the agenda is the consideration of the flow chart from the Board of Finance. I'm gonna make a motion that we table this. We're gonna have another meeting before the Board of Finance meets again. So there's a little information in there for you, Brian, to look over, and we can discuss it at the next selectmen's meeting. I have a second for that. Oh, I hear them.
we don't.
I'm just saying that, you know, we can look it over before the controller just reported to the Board of to the first selectman. There's now a line that comes down from the Board of Finance to the controllers also, so he has dual responsibilities to it.
So we don't want to vote on this tonight?
No, because I have some questions for the town attorney on it. And we have time at our next meeting is before the Board of Finance meets, and we can forward it to the Board of Finance.
Does this come with? Does charter discuss?
Well, that's my question to the town attorney, that can we do this? or if it has to go through the charter. Okay. So motion to table,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Carries. All right. Next, we have consideration of a PUC project approval water treatment plant, suggested date of referendum and referral to the Board of Finance.
That's and more.
And referral to the Board of Finance because the town guarantees the loan. All right, I'll put a motion on the table. That the Board of Selectmen approves construction of the Brookston Well Water Treatment Plant in the amount of $12,290,057, which includes $9,988,250 for construction, $499,413 for contingency, $1,786,394 for professional services, $16,000 for legal fees. That's my motion.
Second.
And possible referendum date of November 29th.
This year,
Any other questions on the
we're
motion?
talking about November 29th of this year.
Yes.
Is
The
that-
the project's been bid and approved by the board of by the PUC commission.
Does that affect though, that we talked to Tim about? if
Yes,
there's a
it's
there's
all-
a
it's all-
primary, it won't
Right,
affect
no,
primaries.
Right, it all.
Fits
We met,
into
we
the
met
timeline.
with Tim and the registrars and we worked it in. The date of the referendum should be the 29th or 30th, and we're backing up for the town meeting, date and to the Board of Finance. It looks like a regular meeting of the Board of Finance on November 8th. So we won't require a special meeting for the Board of Finance.
Right.
Okay. This is to move the project along. It's a new well field down there in behind the old police station. We're looking to pump anywhere from 800,000 to 1 million gallons of water out of that well a day if it's needed. So it's a long. I can also mention that we're looking at a state loan at 2% from the state. And grants for that, so it would all be reduced. The $2 million by any grants that we receive for the Clean Water Acts and stuff. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, can I have a point of clarification? So is L1 the consideration of purchase and installation of new motors for the day?
No,
Or that's going into
I-
that loan, right, with the
Yeah.
chief's truck?
all the other stuff we were tabling
Okay.
for going back to the
Yep.
fire commission, putting a whole capital project together.
Got it.
Okay. All right.
Do you need to vote on the referendum date at this point, Rich? Or is that
Pardon?
later? Do you
Pardon?
need to vote on the referendum date at this
No,
point?
the town meeting will set the referendum.
Okay,
Yeah, this is one of those situations where we have to go to, if you look in the charter, it refers to the couple of state statutes, and one of them says that the town meeting sets the referendum date. We can only suggest it.
Okay, next on the agenda is to accept the grant from the state of Connecticut. Make a motion to accept the grant from the state of Connecticut Department of DPH for an additional $16,000 for the Bethel Health Department Johnson and Berry School Unified Sports Grant, additional $16,000 from the DPH. The new contract would total $21,142. We had already approved a $5,000 grant. Laura Vasile had received a notification that we could apply for the other $16,000. So that's a great opportunity. I have a second.
So
Just one comment, Rich.
Yes.
Can you maybe amend that and just say and authorize the Director of Health to enter into the agreement? Then it's done and it's over with. She can handle it all.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the next item is a grant from the state of Connecticut. I'll make a motion to apply for accept the grant from the state of Connecticut for rural roads for the Bethel Police Department in the amount of $5,000. And they have an opportunity to apply up to 10 times for this. But the grant right now is for just $5,000.
what it is, it's a radar grant where the state matches certain amounts of funds to set up ships to run radar on problem roads. So it's a matching grant. Second,
Did you say it's a matching grant?
they match some of it, yeah. So if the PD is applying for 5, they're gonna get some money back from the state, you know, they'll know, like maybe the state's saying, giving them 10,000, but 5,000 has to come from them, they will get some money back from the rural roads speed enforcement.
I didn't see anything about a matching grant.
Well, think about it, we wouldn't need a grant if it wasn't some sort of match, they just use 5,000 in overtime. I used to do the grant for the police department, they'll get some money back.
Well, Brian, this may be a little bit different because what it says is that the monies are coming from the state ARPA fund.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, and I looked at it quickly, don't get me wrong, I didn't read it cover to cover, you know, with every little word. But I didn't see anything in it that said that we had to return any funds or we had to match funds. And I think the reason is why is because it's coming from the state ARPA funds.
Yes, that's good. So it's even better, 100%.
All right, the Bethel Police Department would aim to reduce motor vehicle accidents, distract driving, hazard violations, increasing police presence with devoted traffic enforcement. The Bethel Police Department regularly receives complaints residents regarding the need for speed enforcement, stop signs enforcement, and other traffic violations. Often patrol divisions must divide their time between routine calls for service and emergency calls, casework, proactive patrols, enforcement, grants funding. The department will be able to assign an officer to specific to both traffic enforcement, high complaints and high violations, accident areas. This is the most police present with the aim of making the roads of Bethel safer and increase driver awareness of law compliance. And as Marty mentioned, this is State of Connecticut 2022 ARPA Rural Road Grants.
Yeah, and I just found the spot where it says under one comment where it says funding at the very end, it says there's no match requirement.
Good. Even better.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I believe that's the end of the agenda. Anything else become before the Board of Selectmen this evening?
Oh, you got South Street.
Selectman Brian wasn't going to discuss it.
No, he didn't say that. He said he wasn't going to discuss it in executive session.
All right.
You can check with him if you want. See what he
Okay.
says.
All right, consideration of South Street, the purchase of the property at 134 South Street. We can go into an executive session, or we can
Well, I mean,
just talk about it.
there was an offer of 125,000, correct, Marty?
Correct.
That's correct.
Did they accept it?
Yes.
Yes, we don't really need to go into executive session, but I have some of the answers to what the questions were raised before. First thing is, Rich, I don't know if you've shown or a copy of the email from our town engineer has
Yes.
been given to Brian, but it indicates that he believes we can put a crosswalk there if we have to. I also spoke to Mr. Dibble about that, and he indicated the same thing. They were going to check out for sure for the regs, but they're pretty sure it's not going to be a problem. I also spoke to our planning director, Beth Hvac, about what the use could be. And as far as she was concerned, there wasn't an issue if we were going to use it strictly for parking. Obviously, as long as we didn't pave it, that would be a serious problem. And then the third thing that I discussed, I called up our insurance agent. I told him that I was concerned that we would have a parking lot where people would be walking across the street. And he said he didn't foresee it as an issue unless it was something specifically that we did in the parking lot to cause somebody to get hurt. Like, I don't know what, but let's say there's a big rut and they trip and fall out into the road and get hit by a car. Then in that case, yes, we might be responsible and, you know, we'd be covered by the insurance. But just the fact that they would cross the street from the parking lot, that would be on them. That wouldn't be on the town. So that was the information I got. And I sent, I don't know, Rich, if you've seen it, but there's a simple offer that came in that was done up by the broker for the 125,000. I added an addendum to it that basically said that, I got it here. Hold on a second here.
Yeah, about the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance.
Yeah, it has to, that it's subject to approval by the Board of Selectmen, subject to approval by the Board of Finance, and possibly applicable funding, depending on where the monies come from. It's subject to a favorable report from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that a special town meeting. And then the last thing I just put in the event of any other matter under the charter and or state statute. So that's what, if the two of you agree to it, then that's what our acting first selectman would sign off on. We'd send it back and have them sign it too.
All right, well, I'll put a motion on the table. The motion is to approve the purchase of lot 134 South Street for use Parloa Park in the amount not to exceed $125,000 to come from ARPA funds upon council approval. We can use the ARPA funds for that, and forward to the P&Z for 8/24 referral and to the Board of Finance for approval of purchase.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Oh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Good night, everyone. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Hey, man, the question on the bottom, Renee?
No, just